Hello and good morning. It's Phil Thatch and I am in the day use area pull-off that you pass just as you're going to Harrison Bay State Park. And I really wasn't planning on coming here, but as I was driving along Highway 58, which is a mile or so away, I noticed that the lake has this beautiful, I guess it's a cloud inversion over it. And I said, I'm gonna come over here to that day use area and see what I can find to photograph. And sure enough, there is a great blue heron that's out here waiting, as wading birds will do. And I got a shot of it with some frost in the background. It's really cold this morning. This is November 2nd, and there's some frost in the background. And I got some shots of that great blue heron. Today I'm shooting with the Sony a6700, and I brought landscape photography gear and wildlife gear, but I made this shot of the great blue heron with the 200 to 600. And today, November 2nd, today is the day that Canon announced the RF 200 to 800, which is very exciting to me. And I am the first person on the waiting list at the camera store where I do a lot of business, so I'm excited about that as well. There's the great blue heron, and there's water in the foreground, and behind the great blue heron in the water is some dirt that used to have the lake on it, and behind that are some water plants that have died because they don't have the lake on them anymore, and they have frost on top of them. And in the background of that you've got the fog, and then behind that you have the other side of the lake with some sun and shade on the fall colors. And of course, there's also a cell phone tower. I drove around the day use area a little bit more looking for other compositions, and I kept coming back to the heron. So I did come back to the heron and came down the bank again. As you can see, I'm down the bank, and where I'm standing right now in the summertime when the water is up, I would be in the water. But now I'm just on kind of a mushy shoreline trying to get low angles of the great blue heron with the fog or cloud inversion or whatever you want to call it over the water. Pretty cool. So on my second time making photos of the great blue heron there in the water with the fog in the background, I went for a much more minimalist approach, much closer shot with no trees and things in the background, just the fog in the background. And now the great blue heron has caught a fish. Even though it was 29 degrees Fahrenheit, it's still fishing. And here's a still closer shot at 365 millimeters and cropped a little bit more than the last one that shows the great blue heron and the fish it has caught. Well, now I'm inside Harrison Bay State Park proper instead of outside in the day use area, and it's another foggy great blue heron shot. I'm right here, might be difficult to see. Over in that direction is the marina, and down at the end of this body of land that I'm on is the fishing pier. And right over here in the fog and backlit, so it's basically a silhouette shot, is another wading great blue heron that I made a few shots of with the a6700 and the 200 to 600. Beautiful. I didn't quite capture this as beautifully as I had hoped. It ended up still looking fairly nice, but when you were actually there in person with all that dynamic range in the light, it was really something to see. The sun's coming up nice and strong now, and there's still a little bit of mist and fog coming off of the water. And as I was cruising around through Harrison Bay State Park, I noticed, I really don't know if you can see that in the background, but someplace back through there, there's a fallen tree that's silhouetted by the sun and surrounded by fog. And I saw that tree and tried to make a picture of it with the 200 to 600, and it was, even on the 200 in, I was too close. So I switched lenses, and then I was too far. I switched to the 18 to 50. I should have brought my 35 to 150. So I switched back to the 200 to 600 and walked further back. And I ended up walking all the way back around the end of the slough here to get the shot because the angle was better from over here. And I got a little bit of like two curvatures of the coast or the shore of the lake here with the tree and a fishing boat silhouetted. So maybe it'll turn out pretty cool. Let's see. I didn't like this photo at all in color, and then I converted it to black and white, and suddenly it looked the way I hoped it would look when I made the photograph. So that was really nice. And then look, this 8-point buck scampered by, and I was still at f10 from working on my landscape photography black and white photo with the silhouetted boat and tree. But I did manage to get a photograph of it, and then as I continued to walk back to the car, I saw this squirrel with this huge nut in its mouth. And while I was working on this, I heard something and I said, hey, I think that might be a bald eagle. And I looked up, and here were two juvenile bald eagles flying by. by the time I got them in the frame, they were going away, and I didn't really get a good shot at all, but it's just good enough to say, hey, Phil did actually see bald eagles. I was walking back around from the far side of this little slough where I made that landscape photography shot with the 200 to 600, and I found two interesting birds to photograph. The first one was a white-breasted nuthatch, the upside down bird, and then I also saw a red-headed woodpecker. I think that's what it is, a juvenile red-headed woodpecker, which does not yet have a red head. I've had really good luck the last month or two with white-breasted nuthatches, the upside down bird. Here it is right side up. And here it is getting closer to its normal position, which is upside down. And these next three shots are all kind of in the same place. And in the background there is a tree with lichens growing all over it. I like the warm tones on the left-hand side of these shots and the cool tones of the bokeh-fied lichens in the background. Really happy to get some nice shots of one of Heather's favorite birds, the white-breasted nuthatch, aka the upside-down bird. And I wasn't 100% sure in the field that this was a red-headed woodpecker, juvenile, but as soon as I showed these pictures to Heather, she said, oh, look, you got a juvenile red-headed woodpecker. So I was happy to have the second opinion from Heather when I got home. And I got a couple of shots of it on the same perch. I like this second shot where it appears to be looking right at me a little bit better than the first one. I'm in the woods now. I'm on an island, which is not an island this time of year because the water's down and you can walk right across to it. But in the summertime, this is an island. And I've been walking around and hearing lots of birds. I heard a white-throated sparrow, never got a shot of it. And then I had almost completely lapped the island and wasn't seeing anything. And I came back and I ran into the more difficult of the two kinglets. The easier one, which is still very difficult, is the ruby-crowned kinglet. But this time I got a golden crowned kinglet, and I don't know if I got a very good shot. These things only sit on a branch for about a quarter of a second before they fly off, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. So if I got the golden crowned kinglet, here it is. I didn't document making this photograph of this stump, but I thought it was really beautiful. I love the bokeh-fied fall colors in the background, and it kind of reminds me of Devil's Tower in Wyoming, where Steven Spielberg filmed Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So anyway, I didn't even share with you that I was making this shot, but when I got home I looked at it and really liked it. And now, without further ado, here is the amazing tiny golden crown kinglet. And the golden crown kinglet has some red feathers mixed in with its golden crown, but most of them are golden. And I've only gotten photographs of the golden crown kinglet just a few times, and even though these three shots I'm sharing with you are not fantastic shots by any stretch of the imagination, I think these are probably my best golden crown kinglet photographs that I've ever made, and that's in a lot of years, well over a decade of doing bird photography. Here's the golden crown kinglet. And then I also saw in the distance a downy woodpecker, which I don't think I got a good shot of, and a red-headed woodpecker, which I might have gotten a shot of. We'll see. The downy woodpecker photograph that I made was terrible and not worth sharing, just as I expected, but these red-headed woodpecker shots, while not great, turned out good enough to at least share with you, and this is what they look like when they're full-grown adults. The one that I showed you earlier was a juvenile with the non-red head. So it was nice to get these photographs, and I love the beautiful fall colors and the beautiful blue sky. And oh, wait a minute, look, it's another upside-down bird, and this one is true to its nickname, the white-breasted nuthatch, upside down on a branch. It was pecking away on that thing, kind of acting like a woodpecker. I had been hearing white-throated sparrows, which are winter visitors to our area, and I haven't gotten one yet this year. It's November 2nd, and I finally got a shot of one, but it is blocked by all sorts of branches, so there's all sorts of foreground bokeh, but I think I got its eye in focus, so if it turns out okay, I'll share that one with you. Well, there is certainly room for improvement on white-throated sparrow pictures for this season. This is the first of season on November 2nd, a winter visitor to our area, but I was happy to see it. And here is another red-headed woodpecker, and this one's behaving like a kingfisher, perched on a branch and looking down at the water below like it's going to hunt for some minnows or something. And I also made a photograph. I hadn't done one of these with the 200 to 600 yet, so I saw this beautiful daytime moon and pointed the lens up at it and made a shot at 1/1000th. Cropped it a pretty good bit, thought it turned out nice. And I came over here and I was actually following around a red-headed woodpecker, and then I started on this trail, and normally the trees except for maybe taking a picture of the base of them like I'm sure you've seen me do, or you might have seen me do. Normally the trees in these woods I don't like that much, but right here, just a few feet into the trail, I found a shot that I really like of these trees right here that are kind of clear in the foreground, which helps, and there's a trail meandering off to the side. And this is the first time I've used my new Sony 11mm, 16.5mm full frame equivalent lens for a photo. I did do a vlog test with it, which was a disaster. Just really didn't like the way it was too wobbly, but I think this shot is going to work out. And I'm sorry this video has been so all over the place with some landscape shots and some bird photography shots, but that's just how it's working out. So let's see here. I've got it obviously 11mm, 1/15 of a second f9, ISO 100 with the amazing little lens. 2-second timer. And done. No sound of the shutter because I'm using electronic shutter mode today. I haven't done a lot of landscape photography this autumn because there's been almost no rain, so none of the waterfalls are growing, which is what I normally like to photograph. But I did really love the way these trees look, some of them leaning to the left, some to the right, the beautiful trail going through, and some fairly nice autumn color. So it was worth switching lenses right quick to make this shot. I went back to the car and rode around for a little while, and I found a male deer, a young buck, just a spike, a couple of spikes on his head was all he had, but it was kind of in mixed and dappled light. Made that shot. Hopefully it turns out okay, so let's check that out. It looks like this beautiful young fellow is out in the middle of the wilderness, but what you can't tell in this shot is about 3 feet in front of him is the edge of a huge parking lot where people park their boat trailers after they put their boats in the water. That's going to do it for me here today from Harrison Bay State Park. I've enjoyed using the Sony a6700 and their 200 to 600 lens on the day Canon announced their 200 to 800. I'm sure we'll be seeing that soon on the channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.